Let's go ahead and test the categories filter that we implemented in the last video. So let's make a new test, make test. Let's call it category filters test. Okay. And let's go to that category filters test. Let's get rid of this one. Let's use refresh database. And let's make our first test. So let's say selecting a category filters correctly. So this would be the equivalent of selecting a category here. And we're just verifying that we get the correct data based on what we selected here. So as always, I'm going to paste in some setup so you don't have to watch me do that. So as always, I have a user, a few categories here, a status, and let's see, we have 3 ideas here. So 1 and 2 are the same category, category 1. And then I believe idea 3 is category 2. Okay, so let's go ahead and test this based on our setup here. So Livewire test. We are testing the ideas index component. Okay. And let me just move this up. Let's say, let's set the category to category 1. So there should be 2 ideas here. And the only assertion I'm going to make is to verify that the ideas variable is correct. So it did filter correctly. So I'm going to use the assert view has assertion. So we're checking the ideas variable. And we're going to verify that it has the correct filtered ideas. So let's do this. And let's return. Let's start with the count. So there should be 2. So return ideas count equals 2. So let's look at that again. So idea 1 and 2 are of category 1, but idea 3 is category 2. So when I set the variable category to category 1, there should only be 2. So that should verify that the filters are correct. Let's go ahead and run this test. I think I have to import Livewire and ideas index. Okay, let's run that test. And it does pass. So for example, if this were category 1 as well, then this should fail because there are 3 ideas. So let's run that. And it does fail. Cool. So let's put that back. And I'm going to add one more condition here. I'm just going to inspect the first idea. So let's say, and ideas. Let's grab the first one. And let's take a look at the category of the first one. And the name of that, it should be category 1. Okay. So this should work as well. And it does. Cool. Now, if you want to be extremely thorough with your tests, you can write a test for each category here. So one for 1, 2, 3, and 4, and even all categories to make sure that it does get the correct data. But if writing one test gives you enough confidence, then that's fine as well. So to save time, I'm just going to leave it at 1 test. I mean 1 test for this specific category, meaning I'm not going to test every single category. Okay, the next test I'm going to write is pretty much the same thing, but instead of selecting a category using the dropdown here, I'm just going to test that the query string filters correctly. So that would be the equivalent of just going to this URL with this category selected in the query string. Okay, so the setup is exactly the same. We just have to make use of the query string in Livewire when testing. So I believe there's a section here for testing, and there's something here for the query string right here. So we just have to say with query string params and give it the correct params. So instead of setting it manually, we're going to use that instead. So let's do that. Let's put this arrow back, and the params are category, and we're testing against category 1. And the assertions should be the same. Let's check if this works. Oh, we have to change the name. Let's say the category query string filters correctly. Okay, save that. And let's run this test. And it does pass. Cool. Okay, what's next here? Next, I'm going to test if the status works along with the category. So I want to make sure that it is filtering for both the selected status and the selected category. So I'm going to grab the first test. And let's put it down here. And let's change the name. Selecting a status and a category filters correctly. So let's make another status here. Say status considering. And let's change this to considering. Okay. And let's make one more idea here. So idea 2, 3, and let's make one more called idea 4. And let's change the statuses and categories for each of these. So for the first one, this is fine. Let's change this one to considering. Let's change the category for this one. It's category 2, okay. And status open is fine. And for this one, category 2 and status considering. Okay. So now let's set both the category and the status. So let's say status. Say open. And category is category 1. So there should only be one where the status is open and the category is category 1. So that should be the first one. Open and category 1. Okay. So let's go ahead and change this. So the count should be 1 if I filtered that correctly. So let's try that first. Okay, so that's correct. And let's add a few more conditions here. So the category name should be category 1. And let's add one more here. The status, so let's change this to status, should be open. Okay. So let's try that out. Should pass. And it does. Cool. So again, if you want, you can write another test to test the same thing, but for the query string. So it's pretty much the same thing, but we are focusing on the query string. So what did I name the first one? So I named it the category query string filters correctly. So let's name it similarly. Let's say this with status and category. And again, we just have to change this. We're not setting it anymore. We are using the query params. So it's with query params. So status was open and open, and category is category 1. Category 1. Okay, so everything else should be the same. Hopefully I did this right. And it is passing. And maybe one more test for selecting all categories, because this is sort of an edge case. Well, not really an edge case, but it doesn't belong to the database. So we have to make sure that it doesn't filter if all categories is selected. So we can just copy what we have for the first test and just use that as setup and just rename it. Okay. And obviously change the assertions. So let's name it selecting all categories filters correctly. Okay. And you can do the query string version as well, but I'm just going to stick to the version where we set the variable. So the category is going to be all categories. And since we have 3 ideas here, 1, 2, 3, we want to assert that we have 3. And the first one should be, I believe this one, say my third idea, because it's filtering by the latest first. Say second idea for this one, just to make sure. So instead of the category name, we can just check the name or title of the idea. Actually, we don't even need this condition. I'm okay with just testing the count here. So just make sure that there are 3 ideas, meaning nothing was filtered. So let's test this. And we are good. So I want to make a change in our status filters test to make use of the Livewire component instead of testing the response directly. Now this is fine, but like I said before, when you do assert C and give it a block of HTML, this can easily fail if you change the markup or how it looks in this case for the badge. So again, this is fine, but it's less brittle if you use or if you don't assert against HTML. So we can't always do that. Sometimes we just have to inspect the response directly. But in this case, we can use the Livewire testing like I've been doing for the other tests. So Livewire, let me just copy one of our tests here. So I'm going to copy the one with the query string. So let's copy this one, let's paste that in. So in this case, I was testing the in progress status. So let's get rid of one of these. This one is in progress. Okay. And we are testing the ideas index, and we can do something similar. So what do I have here for setup? I have 4 ideas here, and 2 of them are in progress. So these 2 are in progress. So let's make some assertions based on that. So the count should be 2. And let's check the first idea. And let's check if it's in progress. And this should pass. And it doesn't. I think I have to import ideas index. There we go. Let's try again. I'm sorry, I counted wrong. There should be 3 that have the in progress status. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, so this should be 3. And I'm just inspecting one of them to make sure they have the correct status. Okay, let's run this. And it does pass. Again, either way is fine. If you want to inspect the response directly, or if it's difficult to test, then go ahead and do it this way. But if you can avoid asserting against HTML, then it might be less brittle when you change the markup. So yeah, let's go ahead and run the entire test suite to make sure everything is still working correctly. And it looks like it is. So as always, let's go ahead and make another commit. This is episode 28. Git add, git commit, episode 28. Category filters test.